Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our podcast where we are talking everything and anything SEO. And today we are talking to amazing Lizzie, who is going to be telling us everything about SEO everywhere. Welcome, Lizzie. Thank you for joining our podcast.
Hello, no problem. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, SEO everywhere. In this channel, we talk about how SEO is changing, how you cannot optimize just for one website, how it runs everywhere. You have a ChatGPT, you've got AI overviews, you've got Reddit. So, how do you go about SEO everywhere?
Yeah, exactly that. I think it's a really interesting time for SEO, especially over the past couple of years when everything's changed so much. And part of that change is user behavior and the way that users have adapted to all of the new platforms that we have and the way that people have started to use social platforms for search as well. So they're kind of, doing what they want and diversifying their behavior depending on what's out there. It might not necessarily be a traditional search channel, but they're doing it anyway, which is really interesting. And with SEO Everywhere, this is essentially SEO Everywhere is a framework that I created when I was doing some research for a client and trying to understand their SERP landscape and really sort of trying to understand what was going on for them, because search strategy has changed so much, because it's no like thinking back to the days where we used to just have 10 blue links on Google, and that's how users
Good old
search.
days, good
The good
old
old
days.
days, the easy days. And now there's so much more going on within industries, within Google itself, with all of the different search features, but also with the different platforms that we now have, including LLMs and social platforms. And in particular, really what I was looking at for this one particular client was the fact that their Google landscape was so massively dominated by aggregator sites, so comparison sites, that kind of thing. So even for them, just within Google, this is quite a challenge. What do you do when your top 5 positions are completely dominated by comparison sites and you're really struggling to get in there? So it was really thinking about looking at that, but then also looking at the broader landscape and thinking, well, if that actually the opportunity isn't there, where is it? Because it is there and people are searching, but it's somewhere else. So really that's how this, for me, that this is how the SEO Everywhere framework came about, was looking at, very specifically looking at like what's happening within the SERP, and then what's happening in the broader search landscape. And yeah, we have obviously we have Google as the traditional search channel, or search engine, should I say. Obviously, there are lots of different search engines as well. But within Google, we've got lots of different SERP features, and that's been changing, quite a lot over time. So we had, we've had evolving SERP features and new SERP features being introduced, every now and again over the past sort of 10 years, with featured snippets and people also asks and all that kind of thing. But more recently, obviously, with the introduction of AI overviews, that's changed even more. So we have the AI overviews. If we're looking at e-commerce sites, we obviously have the shopping grids, which are becoming a much more prominent feature. They're growing all the time. And then we have various other things that, features that we see in the SERP that's making this landscape more competitive. So when we're looking at Google, we're not just looking at the 10 blue links, we're looking at the different SERP features and thinking about how we can appear in those. And then obviously we have AI in the algorithm as well. So not just within the SERP feature, but AI, being introduced into the algorithms. That's another thing to think about. And then we have social platforms and people using social platforms as a search engine, but also that those social posts being pulled into the SERP as well. So it's thinking about optimizing for within platform, but also optimizing so those posts appear more frequently in the SERP. So thinking things like, particularly YouTube, which are sort of appearing more prominently. And I think one of the really interesting things that we've seen more recently is Google allowing you to claim social properties within Google Search Console, which is for me really interesting and just really adds to the fact that if Google are doing that and including in Google Search Console, it's probably something that's going to become more prominent, and potentially we're going to see more of these things being pulled into the SERP in the future, which makes this an even more important topic to be covering. And then in addition to that, we've obviously got LLMs. So we've got like ChatGPT, Perplexity, and all of those LLMs that people are now using as well. So the idea of SEO everywhere is really thinking about, it's putting a framework in place to look at what's happening within the SERP landscape and what's actually important for each individual brand, because all brands are different and all sites are different. And it might be that, a particular SERP feature or a particular platform is more important for one type of brand than it is for another type of brand. So really, we go through this framework and then do the analysis in platforms and the research in different platforms and understand who's searching where, and where do we need to be focusing on for this particular client or brand.
So how do you go about it? I mean, it's like SEO times 1000. Because as you said, it used to be blue links. Oh my goodness, good old times. And you thought back then it's challenging. And now, as you said, AI, completely different. I mean, they're not completely, but there are differences. Then you have got Reddit, which everybody is going on about.
Yes.
Impossible to stay visible there because of all the cleanup they're doing, because they suspect everybody is an AI bot. And then obviously Quora is becoming more predominant. So how do you go about creating a strategy for being everywhere? And as you said, everybody is different. What works for you doesn't work for me. And each client is different. So how do you simplify this to a useful terms? Like, okay, you do this, you don't do this. Because it sounds like a massive framework.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what you've said there about Reddit is really interesting as well, because I think for me, with Reddit, obviously, it is a much more, it's been used a lot more, and people are using Reddit to, sort of source, what real users are, questions that people are asking, and then sort of pulling that into the content strategies and that kind of thing, which I think is one really interesting. But also actually being able to use Reddit as a marketing platform, I think it kind of just goes against everything that Reddit is as a user platform. So I think that's quite an interesting that's quite an interesting one on its own, and just to think about how you would actually tackle Reddit as a platform to to sort of market on, I think is a challenge in itself. But from the SEO everywhere perspective, really this is just taking things taking it down to basics and just using your sort of keyword research tools, your prompt tools, and figuring out like what are people searching for, doing that basic level research across the different platforms. So that's one thing. So where are people searching, and what are they searching within these different platforms? And then the second thing really is to analyze the SERP features. So a really, really good tool for this is Ahrefs. So you can go into Ahrefs and you can just, sort of select the different SERP features that are showing for different for different sites, and you can get a really good understanding there as to like how what I tend to do is pull it into a graph, so I can see here's the total keywords that this site ranks for, and out of those keywords, 10% of them are showing a shopping grid, or like 40% of them are showing an AI overview, or whatever that is. So we can get a really good breakdown of the SERP, and we can see, okay, so Google's shown a lot of these like AI overviews, so we definitely need to appear there. Or it's an e-commerce brand, and actually, the shopping grids we can see from the data is actually dominating in this space. So we need to make sure that we're optimizing shopping feeds and things like that as well. Yeah. So it's that sort of basic research to start off with, to really sort of understand, look at the data, see what it's telling us, and then from there we can go, well, actually the most important place for this brand to optimize is traditional search, or actually it's it's a mixture of everything, or it's or it might be massively social search, or whatever. It's just whatever that the data shows.
It's very true. I mean, we're SEOs, we love data, we start with data. But as you said, Reddit is a category on its own. I researched it and I worked with it massively. And there was a time when it worked. By now, I find it really disheartening, because no matter what you tried, either gets removed or flagged as AI, even though you're human. Do you work with Reddit at all? Do you include it in your strategies? Because I stopped. I always tell clients, you do it yourself. I'm done. I don't
Yes.
have that much energy and I don't have that much, willpower to fight being flagged as AI and removed, even though I'm a human, obviously.
Yeah.
And my posts are not commercial at all, but I'm being flagged as commercial, just,
Yes, I think this is the massive problem with Reddit, with trying to optimize within Reddit. And I think for me, the way that I tend to use it is to try to understand, what people are asking, um, and what their questions are within Reddit to other users, so we can source that and use that within content on the client site. To market in platform, I've found what you found, it's like really difficult to crack into, because it's a platform for users to get those real reviews, and then the second you sort of bring marketing into it, it takes away what the platform is actually for. And so, like you found, you get all these sort of red flags and spam filters and stuff like that. And so tend to what I tend to recommend is that, like you have done, just pass it back to the marketing team to just say that this is something that you could, potentially explore, but it has to be done in a very natural way.
It is, but we know that around 50% of Reddit is AI because we as marketers started to abuse it and, of course, break it because, oh my God, there is traffic. We have to use it all.
Yeah.
And I don't like Reddit. I don't like it. I find it very spammy and I find it very unsatisfactory for answers. There are
Yeah.
a few SEO groups that are okay, but I personally don't like it. So I started to look into Quora, which now, again, is indexed in Google. I find it a little bit easier. But again, I am not a huge all this platform thing, so I'm not my favorite work. Do you include it in your SEO everywhere? Quora and Facebook as well, Facebook groups being indexed.
Yes, yeah, it is, but I would include it there, but it's probably one thing that I wouldn't focus on too much in terms of
Oh.
what I could necessarily impact.
And we have got the social teams, right? For that is like, we see as SEOs, it's important, please take care of it. That's my approach to those because I am not huge on social media. I know how to work with LinkedIn, and that's where it stops, like all of these other ones. But as you are as well outside of iGaming, do you see places like Instagram being important for your clients?
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the ways that, so I think when we look at Instagram, I think one of the really interesting things there is, around like brand awareness. And particularly, I feel like we go around in circles in SEO, because I remember about 10 years ago, brand, that the sort of brand power was a topic that was being spoken about a lot. And I feel like we've gone full circle and we've kind of come back to
Yes.
it. But I think that's with the introduction of LLMs, which is, again, is really interesting. Um, and I think this is another thing that SEO Everywhere taps into, which is being visible across lots of different platforms, across lots of different websites, building that sort of brand salience, just online in general, but also that brand salience with yes, the sort of keywords or the topics that you want to be associated with, to help bring brands to the forefront in LLMs. And I think one of the really interesting things about Instagram is a couple of things, really. One, being featured and being referenced in and cited in LLMs, so getting your brand visible there. But also, like, the work that can be done by combining digital PR activity with working with influencers and really amplifying that whole thing through through digital PR and that sort of collaborative work with Instagram and what can be done there. So it's almost like the whole thing kind of, this SEO Everywhere framework kind of just, it all taps into each other and it all complements each other in different ways, which I think is really interesting.
It is. And now you started to talk about AI, which of course is a topic of 2025 and 2026.
Yes.
The optimization is similar, yes, it is different. So how do you include this in your framework? Because everybody wants to be everywhere, yet you find that they want to block all of their bots visiting site because they don't want to be scraped. How do you explain to clients that if you want to be there, you need to let the AI bot scrape your content? I think this
Yeah.
is a massive headache for us all because you go through
Yeah.
the through the robots, and there's like everything that exists from AI and wasn't even developed yet is already blocked because we're allergic for AI scraping us. Yet we want to be visible everywhere. How do you? This conversation is always so painful.
Yeah, and I mean, I think especially when you've got sort of the option on Cloudflare now to just automatically block to block LLM crawlers, and I think a lot of the brands that I speak to are really open to allowing crawlers to LLM crawlers to like access content on their websites, which obviously is half of the battle. But I think from, as you've mentioned, kind of getting that visibility on LLMs is the same, but a little bit different in terms of, how that's achieved. And one of the things that, really seems to be coming to the forefront is that's, and again, just thinking about like how things go around in circles, like when we think back like 10, 15 years ago, really for SEO, we're thinking, we want that brand salience, we want that topical relevancy. We don't just want a link on a random website. We want a link on a website that's really topical to our theme, and it has to be relevant, and all of that. And I think that's one of the things that we're seeing now from a lot of the research that's been doing that at least I've read in on LLM performance is it's getting the backlinks, it's getting the brand mentions, but it's actually getting them on sites that are actually relevant. That relevancy again is coming back around and becoming more of an important factor again now when it comes to AI search.
Yeah, we know that AI is always about giving you the answer, not finding a blue link. And as well, to be cited or found for AIs, am I a good enough source? Am I trusted enough? Therefore, brand. And I think we keep saying
Yes.
it even when we're in a conference. 5 years ago we were saying brand, concentrate on brand, give your time to build a brand, and we were right and you were wrong.
Yes.
But we were right. Brand is important. However, we have got all of these products that are just half baked and they want to rank and Parasite. If you could choose ranking tomorrow with Parasite or building brand long term and being stable in 2 years, which one would you go for? Because right now it's sort of like everybody wants to make money tomorrow, preferably
Yeah.
yesterday. And if you offer them long term plan, they are looking at you like you have two heads.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting question, and I think it depends a lot on the industry as well. So I think for me personally, I'd always go down that it would always be that long term tactic. Everybody wants to make that book tomorrow. They want money, they want they want the profit yesterday. And obviously, as we know, SEO is a long term plan. And to me, it would be definitely let's build a brand. It's a long term route. I would be trying to set those expectations in terms of what we could achieve and when. I think in some industries it might be, and possibly like within the gambling industry might be a little bit different. So you might still like take that churn and burn route for, maybe some, sites that you're not, you just want to make some fast money on, and you just want to turn that around quickly. And then you'd maybe have, a flagship site where, you would do that sort of long-term brand building while you'd sort of the other one sort of churn and burn. But I think, for me, it would be, I'd definitely go down that long-term brand strategy route.
Me too. Anytime I take, because you want to make money even 3 years from now.
Yes.
So, use something to make money now, but for SEO, think long term. It was always a long game. It was never let's be rich tomorrow. And one more thing about this and that. If you could choose getting a very high quality link to your site or getting a mention on that site, and you can have only one, which one would it be right now? Would it be still ranking in Google, or would you try to get a mention to be visible in AI?
I mean,
For me, it would still be a link because in our industry, we still get most of the traffic from Google, but it is changing and everybody answers differently. So I'm really interested what you're going to say.
I think I would go with the link, to be honest, because you would still get the mention, and you would get the mention and the link. So hopefully that would that would be the best of both worlds. I think from a PR perspective, though, definitely, I think one of the things that's really interesting about the current landscape is that historically, I think brands have always sort of been concerned over getting the backlink, and they want that, obviously, that authority coming through from the backlink, particularly its followed backlink. And one of the things that we've been seeing more and more, I think, is actually unofficially those that sort of brand mentions actually just within Google becoming more and more important. And actually, when you see more and more brand mentions come through on a regular basis, you do see like performance go up as well. So I think just from a case study perspective, we can see that does improve performance in Google. But now that, obviously what we want to achieve from an LLM perspective is we want those brand mentions. We want to build up that authority, as you were saying, across, by showing LLMs that we're this authority and we've been mentioned on all of these different sources. And so I think in general, really what we're seeing is that this shift again from, links being the most important factor to actually brand mentions becoming more important and having that influence and authority and power, from an LLM perspective. So I think if I was given one option, a link or a mention, I'd probably still go for the link, but I think more like broadly, I'd definitely be wanting those mentions coming through from lots of different sites as well.
And what is your playbook for visibility in AI? Then I would promise I'll stop asking you for all your secrets, but what is your playbook for AI? It is a hot topic. Everybody's asking about AI. I get lots of requests for AI videos. How do you do these? Why is this like that? So what is your playbook? Because we went through normal optimizing, working with social platforms. Who should take care of them? And what is the AI one here? Because it is still the one in infancy and we're still learning and it's still changing.
Yeah.
So what is your secret?
Absolutely. So I think one of the things is obviously the content. So content is really, really important when it comes to, AI, like performing in AI, and really owning the topic. So not just talking about one thing, but really talking about having like your different spokes of content around that. So again, very similar to, what we would do from like a Google search perspective. And I think one of the things that we need to be careful of there is that, because when we look at performance across LLMs and Google, we are still seeing the majority of the traffic in most cases is still coming from Google. So one of the things that we need to be careful of is that we're not sort of, is that we're not we're not sort of creating a cannibalization effect with content by putting too much content that's too similar on a website that will ultimately cannibalize each other and then impact Google performance. So I think that's one thing that to be really careful of when we are like creating content for LLMs, is that we do consider that, and we want to make sure that we're still getting all of the available traffic from Google that we can get. But with that in mind, kind of creating really long form pages, making sure that we're answering, all of the different questions that could be answered, really like delving deep into those FAQs on page, and making sure that that's, sort of fully covered, and we're thinking about all of those different spokes when we think about like those fan out queries. And then the other thing is links and mentions. And we're seeing it time and time again. Really, what we see from again, like what we do for Google, it does work in LLMs as well, and that's one thing that we do sort of see time and time again. But really, getting those links, getting those brand mentions across different sources, and just making sure they're really topically relevant as well.
Agreed. I mean, it's the same. It's a little bit different, but it's the same.
It's a little bit different.
It's always the technical work, it's the content work, it's the links work. It's just you work with it differently, but it's the same playbook, isn't it? It's very, very, very similar.
Exactly that. Yeah.
If you could have one thing you want people to remember from this podcast, one thing, what is it?
Ooh, good question. I think just going back to like the SEO everywhere framework and really sort of thinking about that, it is, I think it's really important to treat each strategy individually. So no two are exactly the same. Every brand is different. Every website is different. And because of this changing SERP landscape that we have, and new features are being introduced all the time, the algorithms obviously are like including AI more and more regularly, and we're seeing just so much change really, really quickly, I think the main thing to take away is that each strategy has to be different. You have to put a different strategy in place for each client, because really they are, every website is different, every brand is different, and it's that individual approach that I think will help brands to win.
Very much agreed. We are very prone to doing cookie cutter strategy and copy paste. It worked in Finland for this brand, therefore it's going to work in Australia.
Yeah,
It's not.
exactly.
Individual ideas and individual strategy is absolutely a must. Thank you very much for sharing all of your secrets with us. I love the framework. I was talking about it last year a lot, like be everywhere. It's changing. So I'm very happy you are seeing the same and you are working with a very similar premise as me. Lovely having you, and I hope you will come back again.
Thank you so much. Really lovely to speak to you. Thanks, Ivana. Bye.
If you got value from this video and want direct access to us, weekly calls, training, and the latest SEO updates, and a community of people operating at this level, click the link in the description to join the boardroom. We'll see you inside.